So far, the record's 3, so don't feel bad. I think it works a lot better because we are in a virtual space, so you don't get the reaction immediately of everyone around you of people catching on to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a hands up for thinking about just playing Ruby. What are some strategies that we can drive our code into class? Ryan.
We talked briefly about helper methods. And pretty much making things small and flexible so that you can reuse them in different places.
Yeah, cool. That's probably one of the biggest reasons why we want to drive our code is that if we're using it in multiple places, like let's consolidate it in one place. Also, so like, you know, the reusability, and also if we have to change things, we only change in one place. I think that we've had a couple of discussions over the course of this module about why do we do MVC? Why do we put things in certain ways? And a big part of that is you want to kind of have things loosely coupled so that we do have the opportunity to do things like have code reuse and kind of like not only reuse code, but have it be more flexible and better to change. Cool. When we think about our Rails project so far, where do we have some shared behavior? David, what do you think? Where have we had some shared behavior in our Rails project so far?
I don't have... I think for every single method, we're basically like going through the parameters and then we're finding a specific object.
Yeah. That's one. Can anyone else think of any examples where we're not necessarily being dry right now? If you've looked ahead in the lesson plan, you may have an answer. Tony.
Forms.
Sorry, that was actually accidental.
Okay. Steve?
I want to say in our views.
Bingo, in our views, right? And so we're going to look at that today. So we want to talk about like a place in our projects where we have near identical code. And I'm going to bring up this example from our set list. Let's take a minute or so to digest that. And as you're looking, we're going to take a couple minutes to look at this. And as we do that, think about in particular what are the differences between these two bits of code. Tony, was that an accident again?
No, I just wasn't sure if it was a question or if we were just reflecting on it.
We're reflecting, and then we're going to share out. But since you've handed up, you can share with us as soon as we give everyone the opportunity to kind of like process this on the screen. Cool. So Tony, what's different about the two?
The form tag attributes.
Mm-hmm. Like what specifically?
The link changes and the method changes.
URI changes, the edit change, the verb changes. What else? One more. Anyone?
I see a placeholder and the name of the submit button changed.
Yep, the submit button changes. Cool. So the topic of today's class is a file that we can leverage to house code that's shared across multiple views. It's essentially the same idea as like, hey, we have this bit of code in two separate classes, like let's pull that out into some place and have those two places refer to that bit of code. A couple things to note about them. They live in our view directories. That kind of makes sense because in this case, we're working with views, so they should live with their view directories. They have a special naming convention. underscore the partial name.html.erb. And this is very important. All partials have all partials have a leading underscore. Questions so far?
Mike, could you go back to the first slide where you just gave the most basic of the definition, like the next one?
That one?
Yeah, so it's a file we can leverage. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Bless you.
Oh.
Fantastic. So the idea here is that we are using partials in order to drive our views, and that like we've seen so far that our views have this ability. I mean, our views so far, we've reused some codes like the new and the edit are essentially the same form. But I want to kind of mention like this is not potentially the only use of a partial. One thing that we could potentially use as a partial is like things that are just in pages. For example, we can think of potentially using a partial in both our index and our show, right? We can have the contents of the loop inside the index refer to a partial, and also just have a partial inside the show view, as that is just showing one object. Cool. Any questions at this point? Awesome. So I've accidentally signed into Zoom with the wrong account, and it's giving me a timer. So let us let us take a Pomodoro break for 5 minutes, and I will have a new Zoom link that does not have this 30-minute timer on it. Cool. Let's be back at 9:27.